In Focus is powered in part by Go Chevrolet at I-25 and the Boulder Turnpike. Your source for new or used cars and trucks, and reliable service for most makes and models. GoAutoChevrolet.com.
Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
The Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company opens their 7th season with a regional premiere of How the World Began. Set in a small rural town after a tornado, a teacher's ill-advised comments about faith and science sets the events in motion. We'll meet the cast later, but we begin with the director for this production and the producing ensemble director, Stephen Weitz. Well, I'm so glad that you let us sort of fall into your day here. We had a long rehearsal on a weekend afternoon, and I really appreciate getting the chance to come in and find out about this production. This is a really interesting choice for your season. Tell me how you found the script even, because I hadn't read it before you told me you were doing it.
I actually discovered the play by reading a review of the production in New York.
A good review or a not so
a good review
okay.
Of the production that was running in January of this year. We were in the middle of our season selection process, and the issues that the play raises were really interesting, and the play wasn't published yet. In fact, it's still not officially published. So we wrote away to the literary agent for the playwright, and he sent us a copy. And we all instantly really liked the thought-provoking nature of it. We try and gravitate towards work that really raises some issues and challenges some assumptions for our audience, and we felt like this was a great piece for who our audience is, to make them reanalyze some of what their beliefs are and how that they are tolerant or not tolerant of other people's beliefs. So that was how it came to us. And
it asks a question, or it makes us examine our feelings about creation versus a scientific explanation of the development of life and evolution. It sort of asks us to examine not only how we feel about it, but how we feel about how others.
I think that's the key thing. The creation versus evolution argument, I think the playwright, actually having spoken to her, I can say that she comes down very clearly on one side of the issue, and it's not really about trying to convince people one way or the other. In fact, one of the characters says at one point, people are going to believe what they want to believe about this issue, or what they already believe. And I think that that's true. What the issue is a gateway to examine how we feel about others who hold a different view about something, any variety of issues from the one we hold, and what that does to our relationship with them. I think one of the things that we see so frequently in this silly season of elections and whatnot is a real dehumanization of the other side, whatever that other side is, whether it's social issues or political ones or economic ones, that if they believe differently from me, they are not only wrong, but there's something wrong with them. And I think that that's what this play is really getting at, is that our beliefs blind us to other people's humanity.
One of the things that stuck out to me was, as I was first glancing through, the first word that really grabbed me was gobbledygook. And I thought that was so fun to see that on the page of a play, and that was a perfect way to begin tearing it apart and figuring out what I thought of it. What was the thing that struck you? What was that grabbed you when you not just read the review, but saw the script?
I think it's one of the things that I really remember liking about the piece is the character of the boy Micah, he's the child in the play, but he at the same time is also the most mature in many ways. Her phrase, her use of the word gobbledygook in the phrase that starts the action of the play is ridiculous, just in the use of the word gobbledygook, and also professionally inappropriate for a teacher to be using, that kind of terminology. And he's really the mature one who is engaged in having a discussion, whereas her instinct is to shut it down. And ultimately, the adults kind of get into a tit for tat, and he's trying to get to the meat of it, which is the issues of respect and I need you to understand where I'm coming from.
He doesn't need her to change her mind.
I don't think he has any intention or belief that she would change her mind. He wants her to understand why what she did was so painful to him and or other students. So that idea of, from the mouth of babes come wisdom is really apparent in this. And I remember that really jumping off the page at me and being like, that's an interesting character that we don't see in theater very much.
These are three interesting characters. We might see the two adults from time to time, similar characters, but we don't see these relationships very often. So I know I'm eager to see that. Tell me how you're working with the cast on those kinds of stories and relationships we don't see often.
I think there's a danger in some of if you just looked at a character sketch of the liberal teacher from New York who comes in, or the conservative Bible thumper from Kansas who, there's some danger in those stereotypes. And I think that what this play does...
It's easy to make them this cardboard cutout of what we think they are.
And to use it almost as an agenda piece if I'm on the teacher's side to beat up on the small town folk. But I think that the play allows you to make everybody look equally good and equally bad. And that's one of the things that I've really been working with my cast on, is there are things about your characters that we as actors may find dislikable or we may disagree with.
Just like playing a villain.
And that we need to embrace those things. We can't let our audience off the hook by making the teacher look right and the Bible folk look wrong. We have to show her warts too, so that our audience is going, oh, you really didn't handle that as well as you could have. Even if I agree with you, you did that badly and you hurt someone by the way you did it. So those relationships and those complexities are what make the play interesting to me. I don't particularly have an interest in doing a play that advocates evolution or advocates creationism. That doesn't really matter to me one way or the other. It's that issue of how we engage with others who believe differently that is the meat for me.
And it's obviously good programming to do this play during the political season, but you're also talking about issues in this play and ways of telling the story that feed into other things, mutual respect, community, bullying, all of that stuff. That obviously had to have been an attraction for you as well.
I think it's perfectly framed. We're opening the play a couple days before the election, and we'll all be sick of all of these issues by then. But the big picture for me is it gets heightened during elections and things like that because there's advertisements everywhere and it's in the news every day. But really, what I think makes this play super important to me is that it speaks to the state of our country. I think that the divisions within our country are extremely disturbing, and again, it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. What it matters is that we can't even come to enough common ground to be respectful of other people, and therefore there's no room for compromise. The other side always has to be wrong, even if part of what they're saying is acceptable.
Or the fact that they can have a difference of opinion, and that's fine just because they have that opinion.
I remember during the last election, I think it was, the line kept getting thrown around, we can disagree without being disagreeable. And actually, I don't think that's true. I don't think in this country today we can be respectful of people and work towards progressive compromise because we get hung up on making the other person wrong.
Can a theater piece examining these kinds of issues help us get to a place where we're not disrespectful?
I think any good theater that makes your audience examine themselves and leave and give some serious thought to where am I in that conversation, I think is valuable. Is anyone going to walk out the door and go volunteer for the other side? Probably not. But if it makes them think...
But they might not steal a yard sign afterwards.
Exactly. If it makes them think, am I respectful of people in the way that character wasn't, then I think it's good progress to be reminded of that, particularly in a place like Boulder. It's a fairly homogenized place as far as people's views. It tends to come down on one side of the spectrum. And to have a voice in the community go, hey, just because we all agree doesn't mean we're all right.
And the people who live here might all agree, but you have a huge student body that comes from a wide variety of experience.
And we're just a tiny piece of a state that is quite diverse in its views and opinions. And it's important to remember that we're part of a bigger whole and not be insular about where we live and the people we see every day.
Well, ever since I've become acquainted with Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company, I've admired the ambition and the quality of effort that you bring to all of the work you do, and I can't wait to see you do this.
We'll look forward to having you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Now we'll meet the 3-member cast of Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company's production of How the World Began. Thanks for letting me sort of sneak into one of your little rehearsal/publicity photo sessions today to find out more about this production. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
So what's the name of this play? How the
World Began.
How the World Began.
Yes.
So before we talk about how the world began, let's talk about how this company began. How did you get connected to the Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company?
Well, I'll start. I actually did a production of Our Town with TheaterWorks down in Colorado Springs a few years ago.
Which is, I think, the first time I met you.
Stephen, it may have been actually, yeah, it may have been. So Stephen White's, he runs the company with his wife, Rebecca, and I met Stephen that way, and then he asked me to audition. So yeah.
So you had been familiar with their work and what this company is doing before?
Absolutely, yeah. And I knew that they did great work, and I jumped at the chance to work with them up here in Boulder. So.
And we know you around town. We were there when you won your first Henry. So how did you get connected with Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company?
Well, I had seen a lot of their productions and always enjoyed their work very much. And I knew Stephen through some mutual friends, and he invited me to audition for Crime and Punishment, which was in their last season. And I played Porphyry in that show. And then so he asked me to come back and read for this one.
Boulder seems to be good to you lately because we just saw you at local theater's production of Elijah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And you're a brand new actor to us. You're fairly new to Colorado. How did you get connected here?
I found the audition notice online on Colorado Theater Guild and decided to go and audition. And I had heard good things about the Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company from people that I had met, and so I was eager to audition for them and went.
You've been here about a year?
About a year, yeah.
About a year. What was your acting life like before you came to us in Colorado?
I had just received my MFA in acting from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And so I came.
Wow.
Cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So I just moved in 2011 to Denver and have been trying to jump in as much as possible into the scene.
So we have to ask you, why Colorado after Hawaii?
I'm originally from South Dakota. I lived in Hawaii for 10 years and just decided that I wanted to be closer to home. I had a good time out there. It's a great place, but I wanted to be closer to home, but still somewhere that had a lot of sort of outdoors activities and stuff like that. So Denver was kind of like the perfect storm for that. Close to home, big city, outdoors.
And big theater community.
Great, yeah, and I had no idea really coming in, but found out quick that the theater community was really, really big, and a lot of people were really generous and very welcoming, and so.
And Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company hasn't been around that long, but in their history, they've built a really great reputation for some challenging, explorative work, and that brings us to this play. So how would you describe, I mean, I know how I'm going to describe this play, because I had not heard of it before, and so I read through it quickly before meeting you, and I can't wait to see you do it. So tell me how you each describe this play. We'll start with you.
Well, it's a very topical piece, dealing with issues that go back to the days of the Scopes monkey trial, and seem to be very much the same today. The conversation seems to be very much the same today as it was then.
Almost as if we've made no progress in answering these questions at all.
Almost as if, yes. And in fact, I mean, I think it's well documented that as a nation, we're becoming more fundamentalist. We are becoming more religious, even though a greater proportion of the people identify themselves as not affiliated with any religion. There's a lot more fundamentalism and a lot more antagonism, I think, between people of faith and those who prefer to focus on science and more rational approach. Well, I suppose that is incendiary by itself, just saying a rational approach.
Nice.
I'm just sticking my
It's
foot
hard to
in.
discuss these
Alienating the
kinds of
audience.
issues without figuring out how to delicately navigate this little garden path.
Absolutely.
And Emily, your character is not just answering these questions, but she has a whole set of other questions she's bringing with her to
Yes.
the scene. Tell me about
She's
that.
really a fish out of water. My character relocates to this small town in Kansas from New York, from Manhattan. And she's a new teacher. She's in this situation where she really has no idea what the heck she's
And
doing.
teaching a subject that she's not necessarily a subject matter expert at.
Exactly, yes, precisely.
Hence her indelicate way of walking through that path.
So
yes?
indelicate. She's like a bull in a china shop, basically. But what I like about this play is that it does have this major issue at the core, but it's also, basically about people miscommunicating, and it's fascinating that there are so many times when my character could really just fix everything if she would just say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean what I said."
Or I said it inartfully.
Yeah, but she doesn't do that. And so it's interesting. It's basically three people in a room trying to hash this out. And it's the interpersonal dynamics are pretty fascinating, actually.
So of course, if she did that, we wouldn't have a story.
Yeah, it'd be short.
But why do you think either the playwright and/or your character doesn't let her do that?
I think it does stem, we've talked a little bit about this in rehearsal, about, if people are unwilling to bend on this issue. And my character, I think, says, okay, so maybe I said something stupid, so what? I mean, I can't believe there are people in the world who actually believe what you do. And it's this not wanting to, inability to come to a common ground.
So maybe it's not just a person of faith and a person without faith who only believes in science not finding a way to reconcile that, but maybe a big city person.
That definitely plays into it. Definitely. There's some culture shock and
Maybe a
coming
little.
into it.
Tell me if you're approaching her as maybe being defensive, so she doesn't want to.
Absolutely.
She's really vulnerable.
Absolutely. She's really in over her head, and she thought this would be a nice, pleasant thing to do. Romantic notion, start over.
Go off and help the small town
Exactly. And it just isn't really working out like that. So she suddenly realizes, whoa, I'm in the thick of it, and I don't know how to get out of it.
And we nicely see your character sort of call out this sort of indelicate way of hold her to account for what she says. Tell me about your character.
Micah Staub is he's a 16-year-old boy that has gone through a pretty incredible amount of trauma at his young age.
We don't know what the disaster necessarily was. It might be a tornado, but
There are several things in his life that have led him to be where he's at, and
before this natural occurrence.
yeah, even before. And so you slowly begin to see where he's coming from and why he's the way he is, and he does call her out, and his motives are oftentimes twofold. There's a lot of depth in where he is and why he's asking the questions and why he is going after her. And when I read the play, the topic itself was interesting enough for me to want to engage in it, but then even more so was the relationships of the characters and the how they were relating to each other, and that to me was the meat of the play.
And when we have a cast that's this small,
Yeah.
and you're tackling questions this large, it must cause you to have to work very efficiently together to get there and to stay as a cohesive unit. Tell me about what that's like for you as a small cast tackling this big question.
I think, I've never worked with these guys before. And so it definitely, I think, we're getting to know each other a lot quicker than we would if we were doing a different piece. And if we had a larger cast.
And these are relationships we don't often see in theater. It's not a romantic.
There's none of that. So it is interesting because it is. I have a lot of antagonistic. Basically, I'm antagonistic with both these guys. So I can't stand them in real life. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true.
That's a sacrifice we make for art.
Sacrifice we make for art. That's funny.
Yeah, it is. The relationships are quite unusual compared to what you normally see in a play. There are three people who've been thrown together by circumstance. There are very deep emotions that are running under the surface and very deep questions that divide them. So for me, the process of rehearsing this has been more than normally one of discovery. I mean, there are things about my character that surprise me every time we run through the play, because I think, oh, of course, he's coming from this place, or yeah, he feels that way about this, and I just discover new ways to look at both these characters every time we work on it.
Yeah.
And so it's been a great experience.
And without asking you to tell me exactly your point of view on the questions that are raised here about creation and faith and science, has there been any impact on the way you view your own relationship to those questions while you're working on this play?
I think that's inevitable with something like this.
My mind's been made up for years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to be changing my personal worldview, to use a line from the play, anytime soon. But
does it make you leave room for a different worldview differently than it did before this work, in a way?
From my perspective, I can definitely see why Micah has the view. His life has led him to have this view, I think. And so in that respect, it's, you see how personal experiences and backgrounds and upbringings and all of that and traumas and everything can affect your beliefs, and that makes perfect sense. And yes.
It's very interesting how the playwright turns the table on the argument, where the secularists say, we have no room for discussion of God in this classroom. And in this play, the young person of faith says, well, then you shouldn't be discussing God in this classroom. No matter how coded the message was, she does bring out her prejudice against faith-based teaching, faith in the classroom. And he calls foul to that. She doesn't see.
Her prejudice against faith, period.
People of faith. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
He calls foul to that, and she can't quite see what he's getting at. Her only point is, no, there shouldn't be any discussion of God here.
Right.
I think that these questions have been in our society for quite some time, and they're going to continue to be so, but I cannot wait to see you wrestle with these questions at the Dairy Center, right?
Yes, at the Dairy Center.
For
Opening
the Boulder
November 2nd.
Ensemble Theatre
Yes.
Company.
Yes.
Thanks for letting me sort of crash your day today.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
very much.
Thank you for being here.
Tonight is opening night for Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company's production of How the World Began, and it runs through the 18th. Details are available at boulderensembletheatre.org. Ballet Nouveau Colorado launches their 11th season tonight, A Dangerous Liaison with the Baroque Chamber Orchestra of Colorado. Here's a special look. The concert runs for 2 weekends at 2 locations. The details are at bncdance.com. The Stars Denver Film Festival opened this week. As always, we'll bring you along for the red carpet and interviews with some of the filmmakers.
That's all for this edition. Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. With all that Colorado has to offer, we're here to help you keep it in focus. Thanks for watching. Good night.